Layla Grant's eyes snapped open. Silk. That was the first thing her fingers registered. Sheets, smoother than anything she'd ever owned. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows she didn't recognize, casting sharp geometric patterns across a ceiling that definitely wasn't hers. Her heart stopped. Where am I? She lay frozen, her pulse hammering in her ears as she tried to piece together anything. Then she felt it. Warmth radiating beside her. The slow, steady rhythm of breathing that wasn't her own. Oh, God. Layla turned her head with agonizing slowness, terrified of what she'd find. And there he was, a stranger. Impossibly handsome even in sleep. Sharp, aristocratic jawline, smooth ivory skin, dark hair falling carelessly across his forehead. Shirtless. Peaceful. Beautiful. Panic detonated in her chest like a grenade. Fragmented images slammed through her mind in chaotic flashes. Pulsing club lights, bass vibrating through her bones, too many drinks burning down her throat, a gentle voice cutting through her misery. Who hurt you? Laughter that felt foreign. Leather seats, this house, his cologne. Then nothing but scattered sensations she couldn't piece together. Her head throbbed with brutal confirmation of exactly how much she'd consumed. Leyland looked down at herself. Her stomach dropped to the floor. She was wearing his shirt, just his shirt. Her dress lay crumpled near the door like evidence at a crime scene, her heels scattered, her dignity nowhere to be found.
Layla, this isn't you. You don't do this.
But the truth was undeniable, written in every intimate detail surrounding her. Her hand trembled as she reached for her dress, desperate to escape before he stirred. Those eyes opened, deep, dark, confused. They stared at each other across the pillow, two strangers in a bed neither fully remembered climbing into, both searching the other's face for answers that wouldn't come. The silence between them screamed louder than any words could. Welcome to Case Stories by Emma. Before we continue, please like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss any story. Sometimes the greatest love stories don't begin with a first kiss. They begin with a morning you can barely remember, a stranger whose name you have to ask, and a single night that will echo for 7 years. But before the consequences, before the tears and the truth, before a 6-year-old girl would ask a question that changed everything, there was simply a night. A night when two broken people found each other in the darkness. This is how it began. 3 days. That's how long Lila had been trapped in her Atlanta apartment after the worst breakup of her life. 3 days of staring at her phone, waiting for an apology that would never come. 3 days of replaying every moment, every fight, every cruel word her ex had thrown like weapons. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, could barely function, until one day she finally had enough. She got dressed and went out.
Hi, viewers. Have you ever had to drag yourself or have a friend drag you out of the house when you were heartbroken? Drop a comment and let me know if it did help or made things worse. Now let's get back to the story.
An hour later, Lila found herself at Vibe Lounge in Buckhead, Atlanta's upscale nightlife district, where beautiful people danced under crystal chandeliers and neon lights. The bass pounded through the floor, bodies moved in waves, laughter and conversation created a wall of sound that should have been comforting. Instead, it was suffocating. Lila's chest tightened. She couldn't breathe. I needed a drink. Just one, but Lila was already pushing through the crowd toward the bar. The bartender barely looked up as she ordered a vodka tonic, then another, then a whiskey sour because the vodka wasn't working fast enough. She wanted to forget, needed to forget, the pain, the humiliation, the 3 years she'd wasted on someone who'd thrown her away like she meant nothing. That's when he sat down. She noticed him from the corner of her eye, a man in an expensive charcoal suit that screamed money, his posture rigid despite the casual setting. Korean, she thought, handsome in a way that belonged on magazine covers, not dive bars. He ordered scotch. Neat. Expensive label. They drank in silence for several minutes, then his voice cut through the noise, quiet but clear. "Who hurt you?" Lila's head snapped toward him. His eyes met hers, dark, intense, but somehow gentle. "Excuse me?" she managed. "You're drinking like someone trying to drown a memory," he said, no judgment in his tone. "I recognize it because I'm doing the same thing." Something about his honesty shattered the wall she'd been building. Tears burned her eyes before she could stop them. "My boyfriend. Ex-boyfriend. It doesn't matter." "It matters," the stranger said, "or you wouldn't be here." And somehow, impossibly, Lila started talking about the breakup, the betrayal, the feeling of being disposable. He listened without interrupting, occasionally signaling the bartender for refills. Then he began sharing too. His name was Ryan Kwan. He talked about growing up with impossible expectations, a mother who'd remarried for money instead of love, the loneliness of being surrounded by people who only saw his bank account. Hours dissolved. The alcohol kept flowing. Layla felt lighter with each confession, like she was shedding layers of pain she'd carried for too long. For the first time in days, she felt seen, not judged, not pitied, just understood. "The club's closing," Ryan said eventually, glancing at his watch. Layla blinked. Had they really been talking that long? "I should call a car," she said, though the thought of going home to her empty apartment made her chest ache. "Let me drive you," Ryan offered. "I haven't had anything in the last hour. I'm fine." She should have said no, should have recognized the danger, but something in his eyes, that same brokenness she felt, made her nod. His car was exactly what she'd expected. Sleek, black, expensive. They climbed in, and somehow the conversation continued. Ryan pulled a bottle from somewhere in the back seat. Champagne, she thought, though everything was getting fuzzy. They passed it between them, laughing at stories that probably weren't that funny, but felt hilarious in their shared misery. "Where do you live?" Ryan asked eventually. Layla rattled off an address, but when the car stopped, they weren't at her apartment. They were at a mansion. His mansion. We passed my place," Layla said, confusion cutting through the alcohol haze. "Did we?" Ryan looked genuinely surprised. "I'm sorry, I wasn't. Do you want me to take you back?" She should have said yes. Instead, she heard herself say, "One more drink couldn't hurt." Inside, his house was stunning. Marble floors, modern art, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Atlanta's skyline. They settled on a leather couch with more expensive liquor. The conversation turned deeper, more vulnerable. Ryan's hand found hers at some point, their fingers intertwining like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You're easy to talk to," he said quietly. "So are you," Layla whispered. Their pain hung between them, raw and bleeding. One moment they were talking about love lost. The next, Ryan's thumb was brushing away a tear sliding down Layla's cheek. Then their faces were close. Too close. His breath smelled like whiskey and something sweet. Mint, maybe. Her heart hammered against her ribs. His hand cupped her face. The kiss happened so naturally it felt inevitable. Soft at first, tentative, questioning, then desperate, hungry, like they were both drowning and the other was air. The room tilted. Ryan's hands were gentle as they pulled her closer. Layla's fingers tangled in his hair, holding on like he might disappear. Somewhere between the couch and the stairs, between whispered maims and shared breath and touches that promised forgetting, the night became a blur. A warm, intoxicating blur that made them both forget why they'd been hurting in the first place. Two broken strangers, seeking comfort in the only language that didn't require explanations. In the darkness of his bedroom, with Atlanta's lights twinkling through the windows, Layla surrendered to the moment, to the heat, to the escape, to the beautiful stranger who made her feel wanted when she'd felt discarded. Neither of them knew that this single night, this mistake born from alcohol and heartbreak, would bind them together forever. That 7 years later, a 6-year-old girl with Ryan's eyes would ask a question that would unravel everything. That morning would come too soon, bringing with it confusion, regret, and a consequence neither of them saw coming. 4 weeks later, Lila's world had shrunk to the circumference of her bathroom toilet. Again. She heaved over the porcelain bowl for the 3rd morning in a row, her stomach violently rejecting the crackers she'd tried to force down. Nothing stayed. Not food, not water, not even hope. "Girl, this is getting ridiculous." Lila looked up to find Keisha standing in the doorway, arms crossed, holding a small box that made Lila's blood run cold. A pregnancy test. "No," Lila whispered, shaking her head. "It's just stress, food poisoning, something I ate." "For 3 weeks straight?" Keisha's eyebrow arched. "Take the test, now." "Keisha, now, Lila." Her hands trembled as she took the box, reading instructions she already knew by heart from watching too many movies. This couldn't be happening. She'd been careful her entire adult life. One mistake, one drunken night with a beautiful stranger, and now the 3 minutes felt like 3 hours. Lila sat on the cold bathroom tile, knees pulled to her chest, while Keisha stood guard at the sink. When the timer on her phone finally buzzed, Lila couldn't move. "Want me to look?" Keisha asked gently. Lila shook her head, forcing herself to stand on shaking legs. She picked up the test. 2 pink lines. Bold, unmistakable, definitive, positive. The room tilted. Lila's back hit the wall as she slid down to the floor, the test clattering from her fingers. "Oh, honey," Keisha whispered, kneeling beside her. But Lila couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Her mind raced through impossible calculations. She hadn't been with anyone in months before that night at Vibe Lounge. The timeline was mathematical, undeniable. The baby could only be Ryan's. Ryan Kwan, the man she'd spent one night with and exactly 2 conversations since. The first conversation happened that brutal morning after, when he'd appeared in his bedroom doorway with tea and painkillers, his expression as confused and regretful as hers. "I'm sorry," he'd said quietly. This isn't something I normally do." "Me neither," Lila had managed, gathering her things with as much dignity as she could salvage. He'd been kind, respectful, drove her home in uncomfortable silence. The second conversation came 3 days later when he called to check if she was okay. They'd talked for 20 minutes, awkward at first, then easier. They had agreed to stay friends, keep in touch. Nothing more. And now she was carrying his child. "What am I going to do?" Lila whispered, staring at the 2 pink lines like they might disappear if she looked hard enough. They didn't. 3 sleepless nights passed. Layla barely functioned at her marketing job, going through motions while her mind screamed in endless loops. She was 26 years old, building a career in a competitive industry, still healing from a devastating breakup. A baby wasn't part of the plan, especially not a baby conceived during a one-night stand with a man she barely knew. A man who was clearly wealthy, powerful, completely out of her league. What would he think? That she'd trapped him, gotten pregnant on purpose to access his money? The thoughts consumed her until she couldn't take it anymore. Friday morning, Layla made an appointment at Emory Women's Health Clinic. Just to explore options, she told herself. Just to understand what was possible. The clinic was quiet, professional, nothing like the judgmental nightmare she'd imagined. Dr. Okonkwo, a kind-faced Nigerian woman in her 50s, reviewed Layla's medical history without commentary. "We'll need to run some routine blood work before discussing any procedures," she explained. "Standard protocol." Layla nodded numbly, letting the nurse draw vial after vial. 30 minutes later, Dr. Okonkwo returned. Her expression had changed. "Ms. Grant," the doctor said carefully, closing the office door, "your lab results show something we need to discuss." Layla's throat tightened. "What?" "You have von Willebrand disease. It's a bleeding disorder. Your blood doesn't clot properly." The words felt distant, like they were happening to someone else. What does that mean?" Dr. Okonkwo's next words felt like prison bars slamming shut. "A standard abortion procedure involves significant bleeding risk. With your condition, that bleeding could become severe, potentially uncontrollable." She paused, letting the weight settle. "Given your diagnosis, attempting termination could genuinely threaten your life." Layla's hands gripped the chair arms. "So what are you saying?" "The safest medical decision," Dr. Okonkwo said gently, "is to continue the pregnancy." The room spun. Layla walked out of that clinic in a daze, the choice she'd come to make already been made for her. She was having this baby, whether she was ready or not. That afternoon, still reeling, Layla's phone buzzed. A message from Ryan. Her heart stopped. "I've been thinking about our conversations. You mentioned you studied marketing at Spelman. I have an opening for a creative director at my Detroit headquarters. The role is yours if you want it. $120K starting, full benefits, relocation assistance. No pressure, but I think you'd be brilliant." Layla stared at the screen until the words blurred. This was the job she'd dreamed of since graduation. The salary alone could change her entire life, give her stability, security, everything she'd need to raise a child alone. But if she told him about the pregnancy now, would he think she'd trapped him? Would he rescind the offer? Assume she'd gotten pregnant deliberately to access his wealth? Fear made the decision. Her fingers moved before her brain could stop them. "I'd be honored to accept. Thank you for believing in me." Send. No mention of the baby. No mention of the clinic. No mention of the choice that had been stolen from her by her own blood. That night, Layla lay in her bed, one hand resting on her still flat stomach. The apartment was silent except for Atlanta traffic humming below. She whispered into the darkness, to the tiny cluster of cells that would become a person. "I'll protect you, even if it means doing this alone, even if it means he never knows." The promise felt both sacred and terrifying. She had no idea that this single choice, born from fear and self-preservation, would define the next 7 years of her life. But for now, in the quiet darkness, Layla Grant made a choice and closed a door she didn't know how to reopen. Layla's water broke 3 weeks early on a freezing January night in Detroit. One moment she was reviewing campaign mock-ups at her kitchen table. The next, warm liquid pooled beneath her chair and panic seized her chest. "Keisha!" she screamed into her phone. "It's happening!" 20 minutes later, Keisha's car screeched to a stop outside Layla's apartment building, and they raced through icy streets toward Henry Ford Hospital. The contractions came in waves, brutal, relentless, stealing her breath. Keisha gripped her hand so tight Layla thought bones might break. "You've got this, girl," Keisha whispered fiercely. "You've got this." In the delivery room, a nurse approached with a clipboard, her voice clinical and detached. "Father's name for the birth certificate." Layla's throat closed. She thought of Ryan, somewhere across the world, building his empire, completely unaware. "There isn't one," she whispered. "Just leave it blank." The nurse's expression didn't change. She simply checked a box and walked away. At 3:47 a.m., Layla gave birth to a perfect baby girl, deep brown skin that glowed even under harsh hospital lights, thick curly hair already forming soft coils, and eyes, those eyes, dark and intense, looking right through Layla like they could see every secret she carried. "Zoe," Layla whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Your name is Zoe." Life, because this child had saved hers in ways medicine never could. Dr. Okonkwo's warning had been accurate. Even with a natural delivery, Layla hemorrhaged badly. Nurses moved with controlled urgency. Machines beeped. Transfusions flowed. But she survived. And when they finally placed Zoe in her arms, warm, squirming, alive, Layla understood for the first time what it meant to love someone more than yourself. The first year nearly destroyed her. Sleepless nights where Zoe screamed for hours, inconsolable. Endless diaper changes that left Layla's hands raw. Pumping milk between conference calls. Hiding in bathroom stalls to maintain her supply. Her savings account dwindled despite the generous salary Ryan had offered. Daycare in Detroit cost more than her first apartment's rent. But she survived on coffee, determination, and Keisha's unwavering support. Ryan had left for Seoul 2 weeks after hiring Layla, overseeing a massive international expansion of his tech and real estate empire. But they stayed in touch. Long phone calls late at night when Zoe finally slept, text messages about quarterly reports and impossible deadlines, conversations that slowly shifted from professional to personal. He told her about exhausting board meetings in Singapore. She told him about Detroit's brutal winters. Their friendship deepened across continents, built on honesty about everything except the one truth that mattered most. Neither ever mentioned that night in Atlanta. It became an unspoken agreement, a memory sealed away in silence. As Zoe grew, the resemblance became undeniable. Those eyes, dark, observant, calculating, were Ryan's eyes staring back at Lila every single day. The way Zoe tilted her head when processing information, her sharp wit that emerged before she could even form full sentences, her fearless confidence approaching strangers, asking questions adults were too polite to voice. Every milestone felt like a secret Lila was actively concealing. First word, mama, at 11 months. First step, during a video call with Ryan while he was in London. Lila had angled the camera away, claiming technical difficulties. First day of preschool. Lila sent Ryan photos of her new marketing campaign instead, burying the personal beneath the professional. She updated him about work struggles, about balancing career demands with personal obligations she never fully explained. He sent photos from Busan, Tokyo, Singapore, expensive hotel rooms that looked exactly the same. Told her about the loneliness of success, of being surrounded by people who only wanted pieces of him. Sometimes, late at night, their conversations turned vulnerable in ways that made Lila's chest ache. "Do you ever feel invisible?" Ryan asked once, his voice tired across the phone line. "Every day," Lila admitted, watching Zoe sleep in the next room. If only he knew how invisible she'd made him in his own daughter's life. On Zoe's 5th birthday, Ryan called unexpectedly. Lila had just finished cleaning up cake crumbs and discarded wrapping paper. "I've been thinking about coming back to Detroit," he said quietly. Lila's heart stopped. "The expansion is stable now, and honestly," he paused, "I miss home. I miss having real conversations, the kind we used to have." "When?" Lila managed, her voice barely steady. "Maybe next year. I have a few more contracts to finalize in Seoul." Relief and terror crashed through her in equal measures. Another year to figure out how to tell him, another year carrying this crushing weight. At 6 years old, Zoe asked the question Lila had been dreading. They were cuddled on the couch, reading before bed, when Zoe looked up with those impossibly familiar eyes. "Mama, why don't I have a daddy like the other kids?" Lila's breath caught. She pulled Zoe closer, breathing in coconut shampoo and innocence. "You have me, baby, and I love you enough for 2 parents." Zoe considered this with heartbreaking seriousness. "But where is he? Did he not want me?" The question shattered something inside Lila's chest. "It's complicated, sweetheart. You'll understand better when you're older." The same non-answer she'd given a dozen times. Each time, the guilt pressed deeper. 7 years after that nightclub in Atlanta, Lila had built a careful life, a successful career Ryan had given her, a beautiful daughter he'd never met. She told herself she'd kept the secret to protect Zoe, to protect her job, to protect herself from rejection. But late at night, when Zoe was asleep and the apartment fell silent, Lila sometimes scrolled through photos of Ryan on her phone. His rare smiles during video calls, the exhaustion in his eyes he tried to hide, and she wondered if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life, a mistake she was about to pay for, because Ryan was coming home, and secrets, no matter how carefully buried, have a way of demanding to be told. Ryan Kwan stepped off the private elevator into his Detroit headquarters for the first time in 7 years. His assistant, a nervous young man named Trevor, trailed behind, rattling off schedules and briefings that blurred into white noise. The building had transformed. More glass, more chrome, more evidence of the empire he'd built from across the ocean. But something in the air felt familiar, like coming home after a journey that lasted too long. Ryan's eyes scanned the hallway, searching instinctively for one office in particular, Layla's office. He'd rehearsed what he'd say 1,000 times during the flight from Seoul. "I'd been thinking about us, about what we could be." 7 years of late-night conversations had crystallized into certainty. He was in love with her. Today, he'd finally tell her. But before he could take 3 steps toward her door, movement caught his eye. A small figure stood near the restrooms, turning in slow circles. A little girl. Deep brown skin, thick braids adorned with colorful beads, maybe 6 or 7 years old. She looked confused, but not afraid, more annoyed than anything. Ryan's feet moved before his brain caught up. "Excuse me," he said gently, kneeling to her level. "Are you lost?" The girl's eyes met his, dark, intelligent, unsettlingly direct. "My mom said the bathroom was near the corner, but I think I turned the wrong way." Something about her voice tugged at Ryan's chest, a feeling he couldn't name. "I can show you. It's just down here." Instead of simply pointing, Ryan found himself walking beside her. She talked the entire way, a steady stream of words that would exhaust most adults. "I'm supposed to be doing homework in my mom's office, but it's so boring. Do you work here? What do you do? My science project is about monarch butterflies. Did you know they migrate thousands of miles? It's like thousands. That's so far for something so small, right?" Ryan smiled despite himself. She was brilliant, funny, fearless. Reminded him of someone, though he couldn't place who. When she emerged from the restroom moments later, Ryan was still standing there. "You didn't have to wait," Zoe said, surprised. "I wanted to, honestly. You're very interesting to talk to." Her face lit up like he'd given her the greatest compliment. "Really? Most grown-ups tell me I talk too much. Most grown-ups don't know how to listen." She studied him with curiosity that felt beyond her years. "Why does everyone call you boss?" Ryan chuckled. "Because I run the company." Her eyes went wide. "You must be very important." "Maybe," he conceded, "but that doesn't mean I'm too important to help someone find the bathroom." She laughed, bright, genuine, unguarded. The sound made something warm bloom in Ryan's chest. "Should I call you boss too?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, we're friends now. You can call me Ryan." "Okay, Ryan." As they talked, Ryan kept noticing small details. The way she tilted her head when processing information, sharp and analytical. Her direct eye contact, never looking away even when most children would. Her quick wit that suggested intelligence far beyond first grade. She felt familiar somehow, like meeting someone he'd known in another life. "What's your name?" he asked. "Zoe," she said proudly. "Zoe Grant." Grant! The name hit him like a physical blow. Layla Grant, his creative director, the woman he'd hired 7 years ago after one unforgettable night, the woman whose voice had become his favorite sound across thousands of miles. This was Layla's daughter. Zoe glanced at a wall clock, her expression shifting to mild panic. "I should get back to my mom's office before she worries. She gets stressed when I wander." Ryan stood slowly, his mind racing. "Your mother works here?" "Uh-huh. She's always super busy with meetings and stuff." Zoe waved cheerfully, already skipping down the hallway. "Bye, Ryan. Maybe I'll see you again." Ryan stood frozen, watching her disappear around the corner. Layla had a daughter. A beautiful, brilliant daughter who looked about 6 or 7 years old. Which meant the math was simple, devastating. Layla had moved on, built a family with someone else while Ryan had been overseas pining like a fool. Some other man had given her what Ryan had dreamed about during lonely nights in Seoul hotel rooms. A child, a life, a future. The realization settled over him like ice water. He'd spent 7 years building an empire, telling himself that when he finally returned to Detroit, he'd confess everything. Tell Layla he'd fallen in love with her somewhere between their second phone call and their 100th. That her laugh was the best part of his week. That he'd chosen Detroit over Seoul specifically because she was here. But seeing that little girl changed everything. Layla clearly had someone else, someone who mattered enough to build a family with. As Ryan walked toward his office, each step felt heavier than the last. He'd waited too long, hesitated too much, and now he'd lost his chance before ever taking it. The confession he'd rehearsed died unspoken in his throat. Because how could he tell Layla he loved her when she already belonged to someone else? Layla's hands trembled over her keyboard, the quarterly reports swimming out of focus. Ryan was back. After 7 years of building his empire across 3 continents, he was finally here, walking the same hallways, breathing the same air. And Zoe had met him. Her daughter had actually spoken to him without Layla present, without supervision, without any buffer between the secret and the truth. The possibility she'd feared for 7 years was no longer theoretical. It was happening. That afternoon, Layla sat in the main conference room for a leadership meeting, her nerves stretched to breaking. When Ryan entered, the air shifted. He looked different, sharper somehow, more polished by years of high-stakes negotiations. But those eyes remained the same. Gentle, observant, familiar. Their gazes collided across the table. He smiled, but something in it felt wrong. Polite instead of warm, professional instead of personal. After the meeting, Layla approached him near the elevators, her heart hammering. "It's good to see you," she said, forcing her voice to stay steady. "Welcome back." "Thank you, Layla." His tone was cordial, distant. "I look forward to reviewing your department's work." Your department's work, not catching up or talking properly or any of the warmth from their 7 years of late-night phone calls. The formality stung like a slap. "Are you settling in okay?" Layla tried again. "Fine, thank you. I have another meeting. Excuse me." He stepped into the elevator without looking back. Layla stood there, watching the doors close on whatever connection they'd built. Something was wrong. Terribly, irreversibly wrong. Over the following week, the distance became undeniable. Ryan's text messages, once paragraphs long, filled with questions and observations, shrank to single-sentence responses. "Received. Will review. Thank you." He canceled their standing coffee meeting, citing scheduling conflicts. In meetings, he was cordial but detached, addressing her with the same professional courtesy he showed everyone else. The friendship they'd nurtured across 7 years and thousands of miles seemed to be evaporating. Layla told herself she was imagining it, reading too much into normal professional boundaries. But late Thursday evening, as she packed her laptop, movement in the parking lot caught her eye. Ryan stood beside his car, frozen mid-step, watching something. Layla followed his gaze. Keisha's sedan pulled up to the building's entrance. The back door flew open. Zoe tumbled out, backpack bouncing, braids flying. "Mama!" she screamed with pure joy, sprinting toward Layla. Layla caught her daughter, pulling her into a fierce hug. "How was school, baby?" "Good. We learned about fractions and I—" But Layla wasn't listening anymore. Her eyes had found Ryan's across the parking lot. His expression was devastating, something between pain and resignation, longing and acceptance. He watched them for 3 heartbeats, then turned away, climbing into his car with mechanical precision. The engine roared to life. He drove away without looking back. That's when Layla understood. He'd seen Zoe. Not just seen her, seen them together, mother and daughter. And he'd assumed what any reasonable person would assume, that the child belonged to another man, that Layla had moved on completely, built an entire family he knew nothing about. The cruel irony made her want to scream. Ryan was pulling away because of the very child he didn't know was his. Because Layla's fear had created a lie so complete it was now destroying the one thing she wanted most. Friday morning arrived with an email that shattered her. From Ryan Kwan to Layla Grant. Subject, schedule change. Miss Grant, I'll be working primarily from the Seoul office for the next quarter. Please coordinate with Trevor for any urgent matters. Best, RK. Miss Grant. Layla stared at the screen until tears blurred the words. He'd never called her that, not once in 7 years. Even in their most professional exchanges, she'd been Layla. Now she was a formal stranger. That night, Layla tried calling him, straight to voicemail. She texted, "Did I do something wrong?" Hours passed. No response. Saturday afternoon, Keisha found Layla crying at her kitchen table, Zoe safely asleep in the next room. "I've ruined everything," Layla whispered, her voice raw. "He thinks she belongs to someone else. He's pulling away because he thinks I have a whole family, and I can't tell him the truth without admitting I've been lying for 7 years." Keisha wrapped her arms around her best friend. "Then you have to tell him before he leaves again." "What if he hates me?" "What if he doesn't?" Keisha countered fiercely. "Girl, you've been in love with this man for years. Don't let fear steal what could have been." Monday morning, Layla arrived at the office before dawn, determination burning through her exhaustion. She'd tell him, today. No more fear, no more excuses. She marched to Ryan's office, rehearsing words that felt inadequate. But Trevor intercepted her in the hallway. "Miss Grant, I'm sorry, Mr. Kwan left for Seoul last night, emergency board meeting." Layla's world tilted. When will he be back? Trevor checked his tablet, oblivious to her panic. He's blocked out the next 3 months overseas. Would you like me to schedule a video call? 3 months. Layla walked back to her office in a fog. She'd waited 7 years to tell the truth, and now, because of her own cowardice, the window was closing. The father of her child was running from a misunderstanding she'd created. And this time, she might lose him forever. 2 weeks after Ryan's departure, Zoe started asking questions. Mama, why doesn't that nice man come around anymore? The one from your office? Layla's heart clenched. She looked up from her laptop, forcing her expression to stay neutral. He's traveling for work, baby, very far away. Zoe's face fell, disappointment etched in every feature. But I liked talking to him. He listened like my stories actually mattered. The words were an arrow straight through Layla's chest. If only you knew, she thought. He's your father, and he doesn't even know you exist. 3 days later, the front desk called. Miss Grant, Mr. Kwan just arrived. He's here for emergency meetings today only. Layla's pulse exploded. Ryan was here. 24 hours, one chance to tell him everything. She stood, smoothing her skirt, rehearsing words that felt inadequate. Then her cell phone rang. Zoe's school. Miss Grant, we have a heating system failure. Early dismissal in 30 minutes. No. Layla scrambled, calling every backup she had. Keisha was in court. Her neighbor wasn't answering. The daycare couldn't take drop-ins. She had no choice. 40 minutes later, Zoe sat in Layla's office with coloring books and strict instructions. Stay here, baby. Don't leave. Mama has important work. Okay, Mama. Layla stepped out for what should have been a quick conference call. 15 minutes. That's all it took. When she returned, her office was empty. Panic detonated. Zoe? She called, racing into the hallway. Nothing. She checked the restrooms, the break room, the atrium cafe. Layla's heart stopped. Zoe sat at a corner table, animated and cheerful. Across from her sat Ryan Kwan. He leaned forward, completely engaged, smiling at whatever Zoe was explaining with wild hand gestures. Layla's feet moved before her brain engaged. When Ryan saw her approaching, his smile faltered. He stood quickly, professional mask sliding into place. Miss Grant, he said, the formality like glass. Your daughter found me. I hope you don't mind. Of course not, Layla managed, though panic screamed through every nerve. Ryan crouched to Zoe's level, his voice gentle. I have to go to a meeting now, but it was wonderful seeing you again. As he stood, Zoe asked innocently, Will you come to my school's family science night next month? You could see my butterfly project when it's finished. Ryan's eyes flicked to Lila, brief, questioning. That's kind of you, but I'm sure your father will want to. I don't have a father, Zoe interrupted, matter of fact. The words detonated in the space between them. Ryan's expression shifted, confusion, then careful curiosity. You don't? Zoe shook her head, braids swinging. Nope, Mom says it's complicated and I'll understand when I'm older. But honestly, I think that's just what adults say when they don't want to explain something. She shrugged with devastating innocence. It's okay, though. Mom loves me enough for 2 people. Ryan looked at Lila. Something unreadable moved behind his eyes. Calculation, realization, impossible hope. Lila felt her carefully constructed world beginning to crack. Zoe, honey, let's get you back to my office, she said quickly, her voice too high. Mr. Kwan has important work to do. An hour later, after Keisha finally arrived to take Zoe home, Ryan appeared in Lila's doorway. Can we talk? His voice was quiet, controlled, dangerous. Of course, Lila whispered, her heart hammering against her ribs. He stepped inside, closing the door with deliberate care. She doesn't have a father. Not a question, a statement waiting for confirmation. Yes, it's complicated. Lila echoed, the words hollow. Ryan studied her face for a long moment. How old is she? 6. She just turned 6 in January. Something flickered in his eyes, pieces clicking into place. Lila, his voice shook slightly. 7 years ago, that night in Atlanta, he couldn't finish the sentence. Lila felt tears building, pressure mounting behind her eyes. This was it. The moment she'd feared and longed for. "Ryan, His phone erupted, violent, insistent buzzing. He glanced at it, frustration and something like anguish crossing his face. "I have to take this. It's the Soul acquisition. He moved toward the door, then turned back. "Don't leave, please. When I'm done with this call, we need to finish this conversation." The door closed behind him. Lila stood alone in her office, trembling. The dam had cracked, and truth, after 7 years of silence, was about to flood everything. Layla waited in her office for 3 hours. Ryan's quick call multiplied into back-to-back emergency meetings about a collapsing international deal. She watched employees trickle out, first the assistants, then the managers, finally the executive team. By 7 p.m., the building was a tomb. Layla sat in darkness, Detroit's skyline glittering through her window like 1,000 accusations. She couldn't leave. Not now. Not when everything hung in the balance. At 8:47 p.m., her office door opened. Ryan stood there, tie loosened, jacket gone, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. But his eyes were laser-focused, burning. "Is she mine?" 3 words. Quiet, direct, devastating. Layla's breath caught in her throat. 7 years of secrets, excuses, and fear collapsed under the weight of that simple question. She opened her mouth. No sound came. Ryan stepped closer, his voice steady but strained. "Layla, is Zoe my daughter?" The dam broke. Tears spilled down Layla's face as she nodded. "Yes," her voice cracked. "Yes, she's yours." Ryan staggered back like she'd physically struck him, gripping the edge of her desk for balance. For a moment, neither spoke. Then his voice came, raw, shaking with emotion. 7 years? You kept this from me for 7 years? "I was scared," Layla whispered. "Scared of what?" His voice rose. "Scared I'd reject you? Reject her? What kind of person do you think I am?" The words poured out in a flood Layla couldn't control. The pregnancy discovery, the terror, the clinic visit. "I was going to end it," she confessed, her voice breaking. "I walked into that clinic planning to make it all go away, but they told me I could bleed to death, that my condition made it too dangerous. The same day, you offered me the job, and I thought, if I told you about the baby, you'd think I'd trapped you, that I got pregnant on purpose to access your money." Ryan's hands shook. "So you decided I didn't deserve to know? That I didn't deserve to meet my own child?" "I was 26 and terrified," Layla shot back. "We'd slept together once while drunk. We barely knew each other. I didn't know if you'd demand I terminate anyway, or if you'd take her from me, or—" "I would have helped you," Ryan interrupted, his voice breaking. "I would have been there for every doctor's appointment, every sleepless night, every milestone. But you stole that from me." Silence crashed between them. Heavy, suffocating. Layla wiped her tears with shaking hands. "You're right. I stole it. And I've hated myself every single day. Every time she asked about her father, every birthday you didn't know about, every time you called from Seoul and I wanted to tell you but couldn't find the words." She looked at him, her heart shattering. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Ryan turned away, shoulders tense. I need time to process this." He moved toward the door, then stopped. "That night, the nightclub in Atlanta, I asked who hurt you." Layla nodded, confused by the shift. "I never told you who hurt me," Ryan said quietly, his back still to her. "My father died when I was 12. My mother remarried a man who saw me as a business asset, not a son. I built my company to prove I was more than a transaction. For years, I've kept everyone at arm's length because I was afraid of being used." He finally turned to face her. Tears slid down his face. "But with you, Layla, those phone calls, those conversations, for the first time I felt seen, not as a billionaire, just as me." His voice cracked. "And then I come back and find out you didn't trust me at all? That you thought I'd be the kind of man who'd abandon his own child?" He left without another word. The door clicked shut behind him. Layla collapsed into her chair, sobbing. She'd finally told the truth, and it might have cost her everything. Layla didn't sleep that night. She stared at her ceiling until dawn broke, replaying Ryan's devastated expression on an endless loop. The next morning, she called in sick, unable to face the office where everything had shattered. Keisha arrived at noon with coffee and comfort. "What do I do now?" Layla whispered, her voice hoarse from crying. "You wait," Keisha said gently, pulling her friend close. "You gave him the truth, now you have to let him decide what to do with it." 3 agonizing days passed. No calls, no texts, nothing. Layla existed in a fog of guilt and grief, going through motions while Zoe asked repeatedly when she'd see the nice man from the office again. Thursday evening, Layla's doorbell rang. She opened it expecting Keisha. Instead, Ryan stood in her apartment hallway, looking utterly exhausted. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. She stepped aside wordlessly. He entered, taking in her modest apartment, worn furniture, cluttered shelves, so different from his penthouse. His eyes found the photo wall. Zoe is a newborn, impossibly tiny in Layla's arms. First steps, chubby legs wobbling. Kindergarten graduation, missing front teeth. 7 years of moments he'd missed. 7 years erased. "I've been angry," Ryan said, finally, his voice carefully measured. "Furious, actually. I wanted to yell, to blame you for stealing my daughter's childhood from me." Layla's heart cracked further. "But then I kept thinking about something you said, about being scared I'd think you trapped me." He turned to face her. "And I realized I never told you how I felt. About you." Layla's breath caught. "What?" Ryan moved closer, his eyes intense. "That night at the club wasn't random for me. I saw you walk in, saw the pain on your face, and something in me recognized you, like my soul knew yours before we'd spoken." Lila's tears started fresh. "After you left my house that morning, I told myself to let it go. We'd both been drunk, it was a mistake. But then I called you to check in, and we talked for 2 hours, and I wanted to talk to you again and again." "Why do you think I offered you the job?" Ryan asked. "Your qualifications were impressive, yes, but Lila, I wanted you in my life. I left for Seoul because I was terrified of crossing professional boundaries. I thought if I kept physical distance, I could keep our relationship appropriate. But every phone call made me fall deeper." Lila's hand covered her mouth. You had feelings for me? This whole time?" "I came back to Detroit planning to tell you," Ryan confessed. "I was going to ask you to dinner, tell you how I felt, see if maybe you felt something too. But then I saw Zoe, and I assumed you'd moved on, that some other man had given you the family I wanted to offer." His voice broke. "The irony is devastating. I pulled away because I thought I'd lost you. And the whole time you were raising our daughter alone, thinking I'd reject you both." Lila stepped closer, her voice trembling. "I've loved you for years, Ryan. Through every phone call, every text, every moment I wanted to tell you the truth, but was too afraid. I love you, and I hate that my fear stole so much from all of us." Ryan's hand reached up, gently cupping her face. "Then we've both been fools." "Where do we go from here?" Lila whispered. Ryan's thumb brushed away her tears. "I want to meet her, properly, not as your boss or her mother's friend, as her father." Lila nodded, her heart both breaking and healing. "She deserves to know you." "And after that," Ryan said softly, his forehead touching hers, "we figure out how to build what we should have had 7 years ago, if you'll let me." "Yes," Lila breathed. "Yes." For the first time in 7 years, she felt hope. Saturday morning arrived with spring sunshine, and Lila's nerves stretched to breaking. She'd explained everything to Zoe the night before. Mom's friend Ryan was actually someone very special. How special? Zoe had asked, suspicion creeping into her voice. The most special, Lila whispered, kneeling to her daughter's level. He's your dad, sweetheart. Zoe's eyes went wide as moons. Now, watching the clock tick toward 10 a.m., Lila wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. What if Zoe rejected him? What if Ryan changed his mind? The doorbell rang. Lila's heart stopped. Ryan stood in the hallway holding a gift bag, looking more nervous than she'd ever seen him, this billionaire who commanded boardrooms across 3 continents. Zoe stood behind her mother, suddenly shy. Ryan knelt slowly to her level, his eyes already glistening. "Hi, Zoe." "Hi," she whispered. "Your mom told you who I am?" Zoe nodded, her braids swaying. "You're my dad, the one I asked about." "I am," Ryan said, his voice thick with emotion. "And I'm so sorry I wasn't here before, but if you'll let me, I'd like to be here now, for everything." Zoe studied him with those intelligent eyes, his eyes, for a long moment. "Did you not want me before?" The question shattered both adults. Ryan shook his head firmly, tears threatening to spill. "I didn't know about you, sweetheart. If I had known, I would have been there from the very beginning. That's the truth." Zoe considered this with heartbreaking seriousness. "Mom said she was scared to tell you." "She was," Ryan confirmed gently, "and I understand why. But we're not scared anymore, are we, Zoe?" Slowly, tentatively, Zoe shook her head. The first hour was cautious. Ryan gave her the gift, a beautifully illustrated book about monarch butterflies, remembering her science project. Zoe's face lit up like sunrise. They sat on the living room floor, Zoe explaining each species with animated gestures, while Ryan listened with complete focus. Layla watched from the kitchen doorway, tears streaming silently down her face. Her daughter, and her, and Ryan, together, finally. "Can I ask you something?" Zoe said suddenly. "Anything," Ryan replied. "Why were you staring at my mom that day in the hallway when I first met you?" Ryan's eyes flicked to Layla, then back to Zoe. "Because your mom is the most beautiful, kind, brilliant person I've ever met, and I was trying to find the courage to tell her something important." "What?" Zoe pressed, curiosity blazing. "That I love her," Ryan said simply. "I've loved her for a very long time." Zoe's eyes widened. She looked at her mother, processing. "Do you love him back?" Layla laughed through her tears. "Yes, baby, very much." Zoe absorbed this with serious concentration. Then she announced, "Good, because I think I like having a dad, especially one who listens to my butterfly facts." Ryan's composure cracked completely. He pulled Zoe into a gentle hug. This time, she didn't pull away. She wrapped her small arms around his neck and whispered, "Will you come to my science night at school?" "I wouldn't miss it for anything in the world," Ryan promised, his voice breaking. As afternoon faded into evening, they ordered pizza and watched Zoe's favorite movie. Somewhere during animated musical numbers, Zoe fell asleep between them on the couch, her head on Ryan's shoulder. He looked down at her with such tenderness that Layla's heart ached. 7 years, he whispered. 7 years of goodnight kisses I missed. "You have thousands ahead of you," Layla said softly. Ryan's hand found hers across their daughter's sleeping form. "We all do." And for the first time since that morning she woke up in his bed, Layla felt like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. They weren't just strangers anymore. They were something much more fragile and precious. A family learning to trust. The first month was messy, beautiful, and terrifying. Ryan moved his Detroit operations from temporary to permanent, purchasing a home in Ann Arbor, close to Zoe's school but respectful of Lila's space. They established a rhythm: dinners twice a week, weekend outings, bedtime video calls when he traveled. But learning to co-parent while nursing 7 years of complicated feelings proved harder than either expected. The first major conflict erupted over dinner. Zoe mentioned casually, "Daddy said I could get a puppy." Lila's head snapped up from her laptop. She said, "What?" That evening, she called Ryan, her voice tight with frustration. "You can't make promises like that without talking to me first." "I'm her father," Ryan said, defensive. "I can spoil my daughter if I want to." "Spoiling her and undermining me are different things," Lila shot back. The argument escalated until Ryan finally said, "You had her to yourself for 7 years. Maybe I'm just trying to make up for lost time." The words hung heavy. Lila's voice went quiet. "That's not fair." Ryan sighed, exhaustion bleeding through the phone. "I know. I'm sorry. I don't know how to do this." "And neither do I," admitted Lila. "But we have to figure it out, together, not as opponents." That night they met in person. No Zoe, just two adults navigating impossible waters. They established ground rules. Major decisions made jointly. Consistent discipline. United front in front of Zoe. It was the first of many difficult conversations. But slowly, the good moments began outweighing the hard ones. Ryan showed up for Zoe's science night, standing in the elementary school cafeteria looking completely out of place in his expensive suit among casual suburban parents. Zoe presented her butterfly project with pride, introducing "my dad" to her teacher with a grin that made Ryan's eyes water. Later, 3 girls from Zoe's class approached Lila. "Your husband is really handsome," one whispered, giggling. Before Lila could correct them, Ryan's hand found the small of her back. "Thank you," he said smoothly, leaving the clarification unspoken. The casual touches became more frequent. Ryan's hand on her shoulder during Zoe's soccer games, Lila's fingers brushing his as they passed dishes during family dinners, long looks that lasted seconds too long. One evening, after Zoe fell asleep during a movie at Ryan's house, Lila tried to carry her to the guest room. "I've got her," Ryan whispered, lifting their daughter effortlessly. Lila followed him upstairs, watching as he gently tucked Zoe in, kissing her forehead with such tenderness it broke something open in Lila's chest. In the hallway outside Zoe's room, they stood too close in the dim light. "Thank you," Lila whispered. "For what?" "For being the father I was afraid you wouldn't be. For proving every fear I had wrong." Ryan's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "Thank you for raising her into someone so incredible, for keeping her safe, for loving her so fiercely that you were willing to do it alone." The air between them shifted, charged with 7 years of longing. "Lila," Ryan breathed, his face inches from hers. "We should talk about—" A sound from Zoe's room, a sleepy murmur. They stepped apart quickly, the moment shattered. "I should get her home," though neither moved. "Yeah," Ryan agreed, his voice rough. "But Lila, soon. We need to talk about this. About us." "I know," she whispered. Because the truth was becoming undeniable. They weren't just co-parents rebuilding trust. They were 2 people who'd loved each other for years, finally in the same place at the same time. And the pull between them was becoming impossible to ignore. 3 months into their new family dynamic, Ryan invited them to his penthouse for dinner. A formal thing, he'd said. Lila arrived with Zoe to find candles flickering on the dining table, soft jazz playing, and Ryan looking nervous in a way she'd never seen. "This is fancy," Zoe announced, eyes wide with appreciation. "What's the occasion?" "I wanted to celebrate," Ryan said, smiling at his daughter. 3 months of being the luckiest dad in the world. Dinner was beautiful. Ryan had hired a private chef who prepared Zoe's favorites, mac and cheese elevated to gourmet status, alongside more sophisticated dishes. They talked and laughed, Zoe recounting playground drama with animated gestures that made both adults grin. Lila watched Ryan watch their daughter, his expression soft with adoration. After dessert, Zoe excused herself to Ryan's living room to build with the expensive blocks he'd bought her. Alone at the table, the energy shifted. "I need to tell you something," Ryan said, his voice serious. Lila's heart raced. "The Seoul office wants me back for a 6-month project. It's a massive expansion that would secure the company's future for decades." Lila's stomach dropped. 6 months? "I told them no," Ryan said, quickly, leaning forward. "I'm not leaving Zoe. Not now. Not after missing so much." "Ryan, your company." "My company will survive. My daughter's childhood won't wait." Lila's eyes filled with tears. "You'd really give up that opportunity? For her? For you?" Without hesitation, he reached across the table, taking her hand. "Lila, these past 3 months have been the happiest of my life. Coming home to Zoe's soccer games, helping with homework, terrible jokes over pancakes on Saturday mornings. I don't want to miss any more." His thumb stroked her knuckles. "And if I'm being honest, it's not just about Zoe anymore." Before Lila could respond, Zoe's voice cut through the moment. "Why are you two staring at each other like that?" They turned to find their daughter standing in the doorway, hands on hips, eyes narrowed with 6-year-old suspicion. "Like what, sweetheart?" Lila asked, flustered. "Like how Princess Tiana looks at Prince Naveen in my movie," Zoe said matter-of-factly. "All googly-eyed and stuff." Ryan couldn't help but laugh. "Googly-eyed?" "Yeah," Zoe confirmed, walking closer. "Do you, like each other? Like boyfriend-girlfriend-like?" Lila and Ryan exchanged glances. "Would that bother you?" Ryan asked gently. "If your mom and I had feelings for each other?" Zoe thought about this with impressive seriousness. "Will you get married and make us a real family?" "We're already a real family," Lila said softly. "But yes, baby, we do have feelings for each other." Zoe's face split into a grin. "Good, because Maya at school has a stepdad and she says it's not the same as when both your parents love each other. This way is better." After Zoe returned to her blocks, satisfied with the confession, Lila and Ryan stood on his balcony overlooking Detroit's skyline. The city lights sparkled below like fallen stars. "This being better, us being this," he turned to face her, his expression vulnerable in a way that made her breath catch. "Lila, I know we're still figuring things out, still building trust, but I don't want to pretend anymore." He stepped closer. "I don't want to co-parent platonically while we both dance around what we actually feel." "What do we feel?" Lila whispered, even though she knew. Ryan's hand came up to cradle her face. "I'm in love with you. I have been for years, and if you'll let me, I want to build a life with you, not just as Zoe's parents, but as us." Lila's heart soared. "I want that too." "Yeah?" Ryan's smile was tremulous, hopeful. "Yeah," she breathed. And then he was kissing her. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, like they were both afraid to break something precious. Then Layla's hands slid into Ryan's hair and his arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer. 7 years of longing, fear, and missed chances melted into this single moment on the balcony overlooking the city that had brought them back together. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, Ryan rested his forehead against hers. "I need you to know something," he whispered. "I'm not gonna rush this. We have Zoe to think about, and you and I, we need to build this right, the way we should have 7 years ago if life hadn't gotten in the way." Layla nodded, her hands still trembling against his chest. "What does that mean?" "It means I want to date you properly, take you to dinner, court you the way you deserve." Over the next 2 months, Ryan kept his word. He showed up at Layla's apartment with flowers, peonies, her favorite, though she'd never told him. Took her to quiet restaurants where they talked for hours about everything and nothing. They held hands at Zoe's school events, no longer hiding the shift in their relationship. Keisha watched the transformation with knowing eyes. "Girl, that man is obsessed with you," she said one afternoon. "He looks at you like you hung the moon." Layla blushed. "It's still new. We're taking it slow." "Slow?" Keisha laughed. "You've known each other for 7 years. You have a whole child together. This isn't slow. This is finally catching up." The physical intimacy built gradually, carefully. Kisses goodnight that lingered longer each time. Ryan's hands learning the curve of Layla's waist as they danced in his living room while Zoe slept. The night Layla stayed over after a late movie, they lay in his bed fully clothed, just talking in the darkness. "I was so lonely before you," Ryan confessed. "Even surrounded by people, I felt invisible, like nobody saw the real me." "I see you," Layla whispered. "I've always seen you." Their first time being intimate again, sober, intentional, 7 years after that drunken night, happened on a quiet Saturday when Zoe was at a sleepover. Ryan cooked dinner, they shared wine, and when he led her upstairs, every touch was reverent. He took his time, whispering how beautiful she was, how long he'd dreamed of this. The intimacy was slow, tender, filled with whispered confessions. When it was over, they lay tangled together, and Lila cried, not from sadness, but from finally feeling whole. "I need to ask you something," Ryan said one evening, 6 months into their official relationship. They sat on his couch, Zoe reading in the next room. Lila's heart jumped. Okay? I'm not going to propose, he said. Her heart sank before he continued. Not because I don't want to marry you, but because I want to do this differently. I want to promise you something first. He took both her hands. I promise to be patient with your fears, to earn your trust every single day, to be the father Zoe deserves and the partner you need. I promise that when I do ask you to marry me, you'll know without any doubt that I'm choosing you, not out of obligation or guilt, but because my life is better with you in it. Tears streamed down Lila's face. Ryan, I'm not asking you to say yes to marriage today, he interrupted gently. I'm asking you to say yes to building something real, to letting me love you the way I should have from the beginning. Can you do that? Lila thought about the scared girl in the clinic 7 years ago, the single mother who raised a daughter alone, the woman who'd been so afraid of rejection she'd hidden the truth. And then she looked at the man in front of her, the one who'd proven every fear wrong. Yes, she whispered, I can do that. Ryan pulled her close, kissing her forehead. Then we have all the time in the world. Belle Isle Park blazed with autumn colors, gold, crimson, and amber leaves carpeting the paths along the Detroit River. Zoe ran ahead, her laughter echoing across the water as she chased ducks near the shoreline. Behind her, Ryan and Lila walked hand in hand, their pace unhurried. She's getting so big, Ryan marveled, watching their daughter. 7.5 now. I can't believe I almost missed all of this. But you didn't, Lila said softly. You're here now. That's what matters. He squeezed her hand. I got the final numbers from Seoul this morning. The expansion is complete. The company's stable for the next decade at least. That's incredible, Lila said, genuinely proud. It is, but you know what's more incredible? Ryan stopped walking, turning to face her. I don't care. 2 years ago, that deal would have been everything. Now, it's just business. Lila smiled. What happened to the workaholic billionaire I met in that nightclub? He met a woman who showed him what actually matters. Family, love, being present for the moments you can't get back. Zoe called out from the waterfront. Mom, Dad, come see. They made their way to where she stood, pointing at a butterfly resting on a fallen leaf. It's a monarch, she announced proudly, her science knowledge on full display. They migrate thousands of miles. Can you believe something so small is so brave? Ryan crouched beside Zoe. Just like your mom, he said, winking at Lila. She's the bravest person I know. What about you? Zoe challenged. Are you brave? I'm learning to be, honestly, from both of you. Later, as the sun began setting over the river, casting everything in golden light, they sat on a bench, Zoe between them, chattering about school and friends and her upcoming birthday party. When Zoe ran off to explore again, staying within eyesight, Ryan turned to Lila. I love you, he said simply. 3 words he'd said before, but this time felt different, weightier, more certain. I love you too, Lila replied, and for the first time in her life, she believed she deserved it, that this love wasn't conditional or fragile. It was real. I know I said I wouldn't rush, Ryan continued, his eyes twinkling, but I need you to know, when the time is right, and you'll know when that is, I'm going to ask you to marry me, and I hope you'll say yes. Lila laughed, tears sparkling in her eyes. When the time is right, I will. Zoe bounded back, throwing herself between them. Can we get ice cream? Absolutely, Ryan said, lifting her onto his shoulders. As they walked back toward the car, a father carrying his daughter, a mother walking beside them, Lila felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. They weren't perfect. They had hard days and difficult conversations. They were still learning to trust, still healing old wounds. But they were together. A family built from brokenness, secrets, and second chances. The last rays of sunlight caught on Lila's face as she looked up at Ryan. He smiled down at her, Zoe giggling on his shoulders. And in that moment, Lila knew. Sometimes love doesn't look like the fairy tales. Sometimes it's messy and complicated. Sometimes it starts with a mistake in 7 years of silence. But when it's real, When it's built on truth and patience and the courage to try again, it's worth every tear, every fear, every moment of doubt, because this kind of love doesn't just survive, it transforms. And they were living proof. The end.
Thank you for joining K Stories by Emma for this incredible journey. If you loved this story, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support means everything. Until next time, believe in love, fight for what matters, and never give up on redemption. This is Emma, signing off.